My name is Mark Woodward. I'm president of the Missouri Common Ground Alliance. Can't say thank you enough to everybody for joining us today. This is going to be the world's fastest 1-hour trench safety, excavation safety review for the 2023 trench safety stand down. Like I said, thank you for everybody joining us. Thank you for everybody supporting the Missouri Common Ground Alliance. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I've got a slideshow we're going to go through today. I'm joined today by Charlie Peel of Missouri 811 and Elizabeth Morales out of the Kansas City area OSHA office. So very cool. So what we're going to do is just hammer through some things, and I'm going to hammer through some best practices. And when Charlie and Elizabeth, if you speak up anytime you'd like through this, okay? And at the very and then I'll transition to Charlie and then Elizabeth, if that sounds good to you guys. And we're just gonna wing it today. How's that sound? So we really appreciate everybody's time today. Brian Wood's on with OSHA. Very good to see you, Brian. So, and if anybody has questions through this, you can text me. I put my cell phone number in the chat function in my email as well. So a little bit about the Missouri Common Ground Alliance is we're a all volunteer group that helps promote safe digging around underground utilities, underground facilities, and excavation job site best practices, right? So we host the annual Damage Prevention Summit, and we host the International Utility Locate Rodeo. So that's kind of what we do. That's our two premier events. We do some trench safety outreach over in Kansas City. We do webinars every once in a while. So that's kind of who we are. You can find more out about Missouri Common Ground Alliance at MOCGA.org and the Locate Rodeo at locaterodeo.net. And here's our board of directors. Myself as president, Roy Crouch at Star Construction, vice president Sarah Galbraith, as secretary, treasurer Amber Adcock with Liberty Utilities, Sarah's with Missouri 811, and then Rudy Estrada is member at large, and he's with Spire Energy. So that's our board of directors. But we have a vast team of folks all over the Midwest that help just try to make things a little safer on these job sites, right? So reach out if you have any questions. Remember, the summit is coming up December 6th and 7th, 2023, the summit and International Locate Rodeo. So block your calendars and come out. That's completely free of charge. So, and AJ, I think we're probably going to have a pretty darn good stellar lineup of education for that summit, aren't we?
We're going to have an incredible session, including an all Spanish language track.
Yeah, we are. We're going to have an all Spanish language track. So the first Spanish language safety conference ever, brought to you by the Missouri Common Ground Alliance. So very cool. Looking forward to that. So I also want to say thank you to Missouri 811. They are the largest supporter of the Damage Prevention Summit and Missouri Common Ground Alliance activities. So we have similar missions, Missouri 811 and Missouri CGA, which is to protect folks from injury and from contacting underground utilities. We want safe digging practices on all these job sites. So we have similar missions, right? So we're trying to just help back each other's message up, right? So we're going to keep on moving. Here's contact info for Charlie and Elizabeth. So you have any questions, feel free to snap a picture of this and reach out anytime. Hey, Scott, good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning, everybody.
So one of the things I want you to know is Missouri Common Ground or MOCGA.org has a ton of trench safety material on there. So one of the things we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to start getting into the content now. It's 8:05. I want to start getting into the content here, but we're going to talk about, I'm not going to show, today during the trench safety, excavation safety thing, I'm not going to show pictures of trenches. Okay, I think everybody understands that. What we're going to do is talk a little bit about solidifying your safety practices on these job sites, solidifying them and making them stronger, making your safety practices stronger. So I'm not going to show unsafe trenches. Everybody knows what that is, okay? One of the things I've got up here is this is a screenshot of a toolbox talk that is on MOCGA.org. You can get on MOCGA.org and download toolbox talks and do those weekly. The big thing I want you to think about, and I'm just going to ask this question, is how many safety meetings should we be doing? Now that's kind of a weird question because there's no answer to that. I just know that on these excavation job sites, there's a million different hazards. I could have an employee roll their ankle on a rock. I could have an employee slip out of a dump truck. I could have an employee skin the side of a natural gas line, right? I could have somebody fall off a ladder, or I could bury people in trenches. So one of the things I want you to remember is that all job sites are different. All people are different. Some of us are tired. Some of us are healthy and getting sleep. Some of us aren't. Some of the equipment's maintained the way it should. Some of it isn't. Some of us have various levels of training and education. Some of us don't. So my thing is, what I want you to really think about today is when we talk about excavation safety and job site safety is you can't do too many. You can't do too many safety meetings. And so I really want you to think about every single job site, and I want you to think about as those job sites change, you may be doing a couple a day, and that is where, and when we talk safety meeting, I'm not talking about a 1 hour thing where we sit in front of a PowerPoint. I'm talking about getting your people together at the tailgate of the truck and saying, this is what we need to do. This is what's going on this afternoon, right? So we can't answer how many safety meetings should we be doing, but I'm going to tell you is and I'm going to put this in a chat function, you need to do as many as you can so they have an effect. So they have a positive effect on safety, okay? So that's one of the resources you can use as a toolbox talk, and also OSHA.gov has a ton of safety resources. So go out and use what is being provided, OSHA.gov. Just Google that, trench safety. There's videos, all kinds of stuff out there that you can refer to. And I want you to, another thing to think about too with trench safety, I think is weird, is nobody reads the standards. I want you to actually go out and see what the OSHA standard says. The appendix on shoring. Okay, I want you to read subpart T. Okay, I'm going to put this in the chat function. I want you to read it. What does it say? Okay, so Charlie has the excavator manual for the Missouri one call law, right? I said that wrong, but the excavator manual we should be reading. If that's our job, that's our profession, it's excavation. You should know what is in the underground utility locating laws in Missouri. So get the excavator packet from Charlie and read it. You can get all this stuff completely free of charge from Missouri811.org and also OSHA.gov. So I want you to know the facts. I want you to know the facts, right? So we're going to keep moving. We're going to go fast. NUCA, National Underground Utility Contractors Association, they have a ton of safety things. They do different events, right? So with regard to trench safety, and I'm going to try to really keep moving, is I got bad news for you. I don't know how to explain this other than this. But when we have a trench collapse and it buries people, and it's 8 feet deep or 10 feet deep or 5 feet deep, and it buries somebody, the first question we're going to ask, Elizabeth's going to ask, or I'm going to ask, or Charlie's going to ask, or AJ or Scott or Brandon or Aaron and Jeremy at site, you're going to ask what? Where was the trench box? Right? And if the trench box wasn't there, if it wasn't something weird with the weight of the soil that did something weird and overpowered the trench protective system, if there was no trench box there, no sloping, no shoring, no trench box, it is not an accident. It is called Tuesday. You didn't protect your people. So I put this up here, this gentleman standing on top of a ladder, because if he falls off, is that an accident? No, it's called Tuesday. Nothing in this situation or this photo was protecting anybody from injuries. So one of the things I want you to think about, and I want the listeners to think about this. Do you have a zero tolerance policy on trench safety, or zero tolerance policy against digging? I'm going to put unsafe excavation around utilities. Zero tolerance. That's it. I don't care what the reason is. I'm not putting somebody down 8 feet, right, without shoring or trench box. And I'm also not going to let anybody dig near a utility that's going to burn their machine up, burn a home down, cause an explosion, cause deaths. We've got to be firm on this. And that's what I need you all to do. It's not an accident. Trench collapse comes in, it's not an accident. If there's no shoring in, it's not an accident. And I want you to test your crews. What are the OSHA trigger numbers for trench safety, right? So at what depth does OSHA require sloping, shoring, or trench shield or trench box? And that's going to be 5 feet. You also need to remember to review your tabulated data. That is basically the owner's manual and engineering specifications for the shoring and trench box that you have. So you need to have the tabulated data for the equipment that you have. You need to inspect that equipment. You need to have a competent person. So the competent person is somebody that's trained in trench safety, excavation safety, but is also authorized to make changes. So do that. Who's your competent person? You may have people trained, but they're not authorized to do anything on a job site. Okay? Know the OSHA standards. The appendix, you need to know subpart P and how to classify soil. When we're talking about trench safety, that's what we need you to do. Now, your safety rules, which are the trench safety trigger numbers, that is the zero tolerance. Okay. So very good, very good. And just to do a quick review of one incident that happened in Missouri, a utility crew, municipal crew went out to a sewer blocked sewer, ran this water jet into the sewer. The water jet got hung up, so they took the backhoe and dug down to the sewer, which was about 14 feet deep, and it collapsed. They dug down, didn't put a trench box in, had no protective measures in place. The trench collapsed, buried 3 people. 2 of them kind of got out pretty quickly, but 1 was buried for quite a while. And you can see, everybody, this is as close as it gets. And this is a Missouri incident back in 2009. So we know who these folks are and everything, but this is as close to death as you get. And I don't know. We play with fire all the time, and we've got to get stronger with safety. Okay, this is as close to death as it gets. So, you can see there where he's buried up to his ribs. He's having trouble breathing, and it took them multiple hours to dig him out. So that's what we want to avoid. So that's the big thing with the trench safety stand down. Is with trench safety is we look at excavation safety with focus 4 hazards, which we will talk about. Also, zero tolerance on sloping, shoring, trench shield. Okay, let's make sure that happens all the time. Okay, so moving ahead, and you can see there. I mean, if I'm closer to St. Louis or Columbia or Kansas City or Springfield, I can throw a lot of rescue resources at something like this. You go out into rural Missouri, they don't have access to this kind of rescue equipment. It's a big deal. It's a big deal to rescue somebody that's buried down. It's not something you just simply call 911. It takes the time for everybody to get these resources brought to the scene. So it's a big deal. So we want to avoid all this, right? So question for
out in rural Missouri,
Charlie?
It takes about an hour, at least an hour, to get somebody out there with the resources that we need.
Yeah.
And if it's an hour to get somebody out there, it's going to be a recovery, not a save.
Yeah. That's the sad thing. It is considered a recovery. Yeah. And it's actually a pretty slow and methodical rescue process too, because the last thing we need is that trench collapse on the team, right? So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Completely preventable too, Charlie. Doesn't have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We see, you see grain bin engulfments, you see confined spaces, you see auger entrapments, you see trench collapses. These are things that are very, very preventable, right? So for everybody on the group or on our webinar today, one of the things I'm going to ask is, when was the last time your written safety expectations were 100% reviewed with employees and signed? Hey, Marianne, good to see you. So this is something to think about. A lot of times our employees are not seeing the safety plan. Is it in the when was the last time the safety plan was reviewed? Okay. When was the last time the safety meeting for all of your, when was the last time all of your employees attended a safety meeting? Now, remember, a safety meeting is not where we just get up there and talk about our hopes and dreams for safety. We're actually reviewing what's in the safety plan and setting expectations. So when Woodward does a safety meeting, what Woodward says goes. Okay, now that's what we got to understand. So, yeah, and Brandon, you've got a great point. Safety professionals should be speaking to emergency personnel in the region you're right. We're actually doing a confined space thing down in Branson, and we've invited all the police and fire department, police, and ambulance to attend that too. So yeah, you're right. So does anyone perform inspections or observations to verify that your safety rules are being followed? So having the safety plan's nice. Doing your safety meetings, that's nice. But going out and actually making sure, verifying, putting your eyes on it, because you know what? You know who is? OSHA is. Their personnel are going out and verifying. And they'll know. They'll find out if you're not. And then they're going to ask you, where were you? This is your crew. When was the last time written corrective action occurred when an unsafe act or behavior or condition was discovered? What'd you do to fix it? Okay, so that's what we're talking about. When we talk about trench safety, I think everybody understands that we understand that a 10-foot deep wet trench is dangerous with no shoring. But what we're trying to do is dig deeper and say, what do we need to do to really address some of these things, right? So moving ahead, to make your safety rules more effective, we look at 4 things. AJ talks this, Scott talks this. We look at 4 things. 1, your trench safety rules need to be written and in place. So where can your employees find your excavation, trenching, call before you dig rules? Where are they? Okay. Second thing, I want you to train the employees on what those rules are. Do they have access to the safety plan? Do they know where your job site safety rules are? Does the competent person know what to do? Next thing I need you to do is audit. Are your people wearing PPE? Are they wearing seatbelts? Did they inspect the equipment before they started using it? Right? So you need to go out there and do job site inspections. And the last thing you need to do is corrective action. Now, in my experience in safety, the last 2 things are the hardest things to get done. Nobody wants to do the last 2 things. I work with a lot of people that sit at the desk and they move the paperwork around, and the paperwork here, and there's this, and there's emails. We never really get out to the job site. And we darn sure don't do corrective action because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So yeah, Randy, you've got a great comment there. If everybody could mute their mics, if you're not speaking, that would be great. So thanks for pointing that out. So that's your 4 ways to make a safety rule really effective. Okay. So very good. Let's keep moving. So to be effective, we talk about the safety rules. They've got to be written in plain language and in the language that folks can understand. You've got to address the top exposure. Well, if we're talking about excavation safety, it's trench safety, right? You need to have trench safety rules, excavation safety rules. Documented training. Well, how much training should we be doing? Well, we're not doing enough. If you do a monthly safety meeting that's 12 hours in a year, a monthly safety meeting once a month, it's not enough. We really need to be doing job sites. And Charlie's going to say that for every job site you open up and you've got a locate ticket out there, you should actually be doing a pre-excavation job site walk around before you do any digging to address the locates that were done by the locators, but also private utilities, right? So we've got a lot more safety meetings.
Do your walk around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do your walk arounds. Make sure that you're verifying all the utilities that are on your ticket are located, and if they're not, you do an incorrect locate or no response or whatever it is like that. But also document that you did that. Take photos as you walk around. Take photos of your locates, and you can upload them right into your tickets. That way, you got documented proof that you did that part of it, and it just helps you later on.
Yep.
Sorry,
yep.
Mark.
No, it's exactly right. So, as that is a safety meeting where I'm going to walk through and work with I'm going to work with all my people that are going to be digging that day or working, and I'm going to review all those things with them. Okay. So yeah, that's very good. Very good. So documented self-inspections, work observations, focus on exposures and losses. That's a thing to think about. What are our top issues? Well, Elizabeth's going to say on a construction job site, we're looking at what OSHA calls the focus 4. Fall risks, electrocution risks, struck by risks, and caught in between risks, which we'll review. Okay. Very good. Documented corrective action. And then we're talking about bringing the hammer when safety violations are found, but we could probably say thank you to employees that are doing it right too. So that's a big deal. So say thank you when employees are wearing PPE and doing it right, right? So that's a big deal. We don't do really well very often. So, and I'm not going to go off, I'm not going to get crazy into this, but I want to tell you that injuries, if you get somebody hurt on a construction job site, it's going to stick around on your work comp calculations for quite a while. I'm not going to get into this, but if you have an incident today, it's not going to fall off your work comp for 5 years. Okay. So it's a big deal. So these things have a long tail. OSHA citations and that process has a long tail. I can tell you that if there is incorrect excavation going on and you contact an underground utility and damage it, and there's problems with how you are doing that excavation, the Missouri Attorney General office gets involved. That has a long tail and is not good. So we need to avoid these things, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on with OSHA, and there's a lot of educational materials on the website. There's a lot of outreach that goes on. Marianne Martin over in St. Louis and Elizabeth Morales in Kansas City and Brian Wood. The Kansas folks, there's a lot of things going on, a lot of outreach activities going on, but in fatality data that OSHA has, they have a thing called the Focus 4 construction job sites hazards. And these are the 4 things that are very concerning on a job site. And number 1 would be fall hazards. What can people fall off of or fall from and get themselves really hurt? Second thing would be electrocution hazards, electric shock hazards. Well, that's overhead power lines and underground power. A specific hazard to remember is going to be private utilities, private lines, right, that aren't located, right? You're also going to be looking for caught in between hazards. and struck by hazards. Now, struck by hazards could be falling objects or traffic, right? One thing else to think about here would be motor vehicle crashes and wearing seatbelts. I want to put in the chat function here. We hope everyone on our webinar today has a written seatbelt policy, right? That's reviewed often, right, with employees. Okay, so let's get into some different things here. I do want you to know the standards, so get into the standards. Okay, dig into subpart P, dig into the excavation safety standards that OSHA has. If you have questions about that, reach out to me. Reach out to any of us on the webinar today. Reach out to me. I'll help you with that. I'll send you everything you need to read. But read straight from the horse's mouth, what does OSHA want? So check out the standards. Okay. And I've got an old slide here, but it was 2019 citations on an excavation job site. And I know this is from 2019, but it tells a pretty important story that when OSHA did citations on an excavation job site, the number one type of citation on that excavation job site was the fact that the excavator was digging without cave-in protection. They didn't have a trench box. 529 citations without a trench of excavators without a trench box, 2019. Second thing they had a big problem with was ladders. There was no ladder. Third thing, protection of employees from materials. So stuff was able to fall in, stuff was too close to the edge. In the chat function for bonus points, how far away from the trench edge should all materials be from the trench edge? Put that in the chat function. Who knows that? It was in the slide earlier. How far away? Randy, you got it. 2 feet. You're right. 2 feet. Great. The fourth one was daily inspection by the competent person. So the competent person didn't inspect the trench to make sure it was safe. And then the last one was interesting. Excavation requirements, employee removal from the trench by the competent person, meaning the competent person was on a job site, but didn't do their job and got an additional citation for that. Now, what does this mean? Yeah, Brandon, you're right. Brandon Anderson with AGC says you need to document your inspections. You're right. Now, Brandon, on MOCGA.org, there are two forms. One is a form that Marianne Martin wrote on an excavation competent person inspection form. And then the second form is what Charlie mentioned, the pre-excavation job site walk-around checklist. Yeah. Oh, and Elizabeth said that this table is still correct for fiscal year 22. Well, that worked out. Thank you, Elizabeth. So what does this mean? So if I'm wondering about safety on an excavation job site, I'm going to use this as my checklist. The top 5 things here, I'm going to make sure I get right 100% of the time. Number 1, nobody's down in a trench without a trench box. Number 2, I got a ladder. Number 3, I keep everything back from the trench edge that I can. Number 4, the competent person does a documented inspection and fixes problems. That's it. You do these 5 things. You fix these things. You're probably going to be looking pretty sharp on these job sites. And then you actually do Charlie's free excavation job site walk around, photograph the marks, respect the marks, dig with care. I'm telling you, you're going to be looking pretty good on these job sites. Okay? So think about these things. Okay, very important. Go to MOCGA.org for those 2 forms. Very important, okay? So we're going to keep moving. It's 8:30. So I'm going to hustle, okay? Because this is the fastest 1-hour excavation safety meeting on the planet. So I'm a big fan of fact-based training too. So when you're doing your safety meetings, when you're doing your safety rules, when you're doing this, look at the most commonly forgotten documents, they're never included in safety plans. Number one, in excavation safety, the tabulated data. We talk about it, but nobody actually sits down and reads through it. Warning labels and decals. It sounds silly, but if you have a 580 case loader with an extend-a-hoe, take your employees and go around that machine and look and review all the warning labels and then make sure that we follow those. Take the warning labels off the machine and put them in your safety plan. Okay. Owner's manual, safety data sheets, OSHA publications, engineering blueprints. Okay. Let's get back to facts. I see a lot of safety plans that really don't, they have a safety plan right here, this document, the safety plan. I look on the job site and there's two big guzzler vac trucks working. And the company owns these two big vac trucks. And they're vacuuming out a huge spot over there. And it's a big deal. And I look in the safety plan and nothing, that it doesn't even refer to two vac trucks. There's nothing in it. So really look at that, okay? Get those owner's manuals and bring that stuff into the safety plan. Review your tabulated data, okay? Now, one thing we don't talk about very often, Fanny says, if you have a trench box, take the time to use it, even if it's for a short time, because that's usually when we see the employees in trenches. Taking shortcuts can be costly. Fanny, you're exactly right. Yeah, you got to drop that trench box in even for short duration jobs. Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So, because, Fanny, Elizabeth's not going to drive by the job site and pull in and say, well, how long are you going to be here? Well, you're only going to be here 5 minutes. Okay. OSHA's not going to just drive by. Well, it's Fanny. They're only going to be here for 5 minutes. It's not how that works. Okay. Also, I do want you to know, though, too, you'll see this in the news where trench fatalities are also being investigated by local prosecuting, local prosecutors' offices. So not only does OSHA get involved when we have a workplace fatality, but sometimes your county prosecutor could get involved or city prosecutor could get involved, because the opinion now with workplace incidents is these things aren't just accidents. These things are preventable. So you even see some of that as well. So be really careful. We have a fatality. It's really going to be it's going to be a huge problem. Okay. So focus forward. We stay away from power lines. Hey, in the chat function, how far away should you stay away from overhead power lines? The minimum distance. Put that in the chat function. Who knows what's the minimum distance you need to stay away from an overhead power line? Anybody know? How far should you stay away? Can't get any machine or men or supplies within how many feet? AJ, you put 10 feet, and that's exactly right. Now, and that goes up depending on voltage, right? Now, Charlie, I can't dig with mechanized equipment within, all right, now this is the tolerance zone for underground buried utilities. What's the tolerance zone? It's 2 feet, isn't it?
2 foot's a safe, 2 foot safe digging zone.
Yeah. 10 feet above, 2 feet below, right? Very good. Watch your work zone, set your work zone up. I know a lot of work zone safety training happens out there. Please, if you work in the work zone, please get out there and get your flagger training and get that training and set up work zones correctly. I tell you what, the highways are a brutal place. They are a brutal place. It is extremely dangerous to work along the road. Okay, work zones. Do your 360s around your machine. Make sure you don't have kids around them. Do your 360s. Watch your saws. Find safer methods. This saw actually killed an employee. This cutoff saw, they kick back and fly through the air because we cut with the kickback zone, and that's a bad idea. The kickback zone is anything above the axis of the saw makes the blade grab the pipe and throw it through the air. So that's why we like ICS saws, and we also like these steel TS440s, which have kickback protection, right? So that's a focus 4 issue. So moving ahead, wear your seat belts on the machines. Your seatbelt policy for your company trucks needs to extend to your machines. And we have a lot of good people that tip over a machine, get trapped under it, okay? Like as in this photo here from, it's an old photo we grabbed from the internet a long time ago, okay? Here's a relatively shallow trench, but if you notice the water, the fishing, the spoils packed too close. One of the things I think about with shallow trenches is they are all very dangerous. They could still break bones. They could still pin you down. Still make it to where you can't breathe. Okay, so all trenches are dangerous. Okay, now the trigger number for trench boxes and shoring and sloping is 5 feet, right? But in some situations, could you be required to use a trench box in a shallower trench of 4 feet? Yep, absolutely. If it's trying to collapse and it's dangerous, yep, you're going to have to, you can't let even, if a 4 foot deep trench is still dangerous, and if it's dangerous, it could lead to citations or injuries or death. That still needs to be taken very seriously. And also notice water in the bottom of the trench. When you have water in a trench, it makes it even worse. Okay, so the water districts here that are doing water line repairs and things like that, water main repairs, you got to pump that out. You got to really be on guard for collapse when it's saturated soil, okay? A lot of different types of trench boxes out there. There's no excuses anymore. There's a lot of modular boxes, build-a-box type stuff. United Rentals has a ton of stuff. Luby, I mean, all these rental companies have all kinds of stuff. Sunbelt. So reach out to Fabic, chat with Jeff Hughes and Tina Davis with United Rentals. There's all kinds of different modular stuff. We got to get better at using it. There's all kinds of different things out there. We know that. Big thing to talk with your employees about is protecting the marks and digging with care and honoring and watching that 2 foot tolerance zone. That is a big one for our horizontal directional drilling crews to make sure we're not getting too close to these utilities. Okay, so that's a big deal. And that's a training deal for your people. Okay.
So don't forget that includes the width of the utility as well. So whatever the width of the utility is, plus the 2 foot on either side. So
yeah. If you have questions about that 2 foot tolerance zone, reach out to Charlie anytime. Okay. Now, this is an interesting situation. I took this photo because I was driving through a neighborhood and I saw the track hoe and I knew what was going on. They were putting in water line. And I got my camera ready and I walked up on these guys. And what I thought was wild is they all knew what they were doing. They were down 10 feet. And this company owned trench boxes. And that's where I have a huge problem is when we know better. And that's what I want you all to think about on the webinar today is we have the equipment, but people aren't using it. Well, that's a management failure. That's management needs to make this change. Okay? And what the employees told me that day was kind of scary because they said, well, the trench, this has been opened up all night, so we thought it was safe. So that hole had been open all night. And that was in the morning. They thought it was. I was like, no, that's actually backwards. The longer it's open, the worse it is. So one of the things to think about is safety rules that people consciously and knowingly fail to follow within their company, and you have a foreman on a job site that isn't enforcing rules, right? Brian Allen died up in Kansas City doing a sewer tap. That's a residential sewer in Lee's Summit. Okay. This was his van. This was his PVC. Residential plumbing, horizontal directional drilling. These are different occupations that have different risks. But with residential plumbers, it's the sewer tap. And in Kansas City, it's residential plumbers that are dying doing sewer taps. And that's what happened to Brian Allen in front of his house off 150 in Kansas City. And what's interesting is you see the entire Kansas City Fire Department, Lee Summit, and everybody out there. and they couldn't save him. He was buried 21 feet deep, and they were out there for like 26 hours digging on him, a full day trying to dig him out. Okay. Then it happened again in Belton with DJ Meyer, and DJ Meyer passed away. It was a very cold day that day. He was down in that trench doing a sewer tap, very cold, and he passed away in that trench collapse. You can see there's not that many rescuers out there because it was bitter cold that day, and it was extremely expensive in fines and in OSHA fines, completely preventable. Didn't have to happen, you know. Horizontal directional drilling when we cross bore, so following your utility locates. The utility locate process is very important because when we cross bore through sewers, then our local plumbers have to come out, and who knows what's going to happen at that point. I took this photo. He was about 5 feet deep, repairing a cross bore, you know, through a sewer. So really watching the cross bore stuff. These things are very important, or very expensive, these trench collapses that hurt employees. Now, one thing to remember about our employees is it's very, you know, we work so hard to get them, and we've got to keep them, and we work really hard to hire a new employee, and then we end up hurting them, right? So very expensive, very expensive. So, yeah, and Elizabeth said, put in the chat function, this is a good point. She goes, this is why we're doing this webinar, is to prevent these tragedies. Yep, this is a quick webinar on just kind of what we're seeing out there, right? So this is a residential contractor doing a sewer tap. Once again, had a collapse on the employee. Okay. Now, this one was wild. I talked to some people that were actually on the scene. The fire department showed up, but it was really wild because the fire department really didn't know what to do with it. So the water department kind of led and helped everybody get the rescue going. So it was something else. They got it all done. But, you know, I think the comment in the chat function about us all helping get more education out, that's what we want to do, you know. So now this is an interesting story as well of safety rules that weren't followed. This is an operation that actually owned a trench box and had a trench box, but didn't install it. And we actually started getting phone calls. I personally started getting phone calls on this job site where a water main was perforated by a horizontal directional driller. So that's incident number one, where we cross-bored a 12-inch water main. Incident two was they excavated it, but didn't use a trench box. And I started getting calls from people, utilities, called me and said, Woodward, who do you know? Do you know these people? I said, yeah, I do. Actually, I have their cell phone number. And I called them. I said, what's going on with your trench box? They didn't have one in. So insurance got involved. Folks like AJ and Scott, we can also really get involved with regard to insurance premiums, and we can actually increase the cost, or we can even cancel work comp insurance, you know, in this case. So in this case here, these are photos that were sent to me of how the concrete was cut. They had excavated, but it had undermined the concrete and was falling in. You know, very dangerous situation. Then after a bunch of fussing with a cell phone on, they finally put a trench box in, but it took a lot of fussing. So that was a near miss for sure. Okay. So one of the things I want you to do real quick too is look at your excavator. Measure up 5 feet. Take your white line marking paint that your locators will give you, and make a mark at 5 feet and say anytime that mark goes below grade, our trench safety kicks in, right? Yeah, I'm getting cell phone photos right now of a job site right now. Yep. So that's the thing about the Common Ground Alliance. We try to communicate and try to make things safer, you know. So moving ahead, Elizabeth, what would you like to add? It's 8:45. What message? I mean, what message do you have for everybody on the webinar today?
I think also that employers need to think that when they practice when they have good work practices, those are the companies that are going to be extremely competitive in the market. And if you don't have good work practices and you have a lot of fatalities, remember you're going to have a lot of problems, not only with OSHA, you're going to have legal problems with everybody else. And like I said before, this is why we're doing this. We have to come up with better working practices, and we have to implement those work practices out there. If we do all the training in the world without keeping that in mind, it's our responsibility to keep workers safe and to keep ourselves safe too. So we have to inspect, document, and save our people and save our safe. When we go out there, we have to be the example. If we are not the example, the people, the new generation are going to copy us. And they're going to go out there and do the same bad things that we taught them. So this is why these trainings are so important. And we want to thank you for doing this, for inviting all of us. And we have to keep helping each other. And because we have to prevent, we have the ways and the systems to prevent these fatalities from now on and forever.
I'm typing in the chat function, Elizabeth. 0 trench fatalities is our goal. In the Missouri Common Ground Alliance, I put in, the invitation to this, everybody, everybody on our call here is a member of the Missouri Common Ground Alliance. We're just a group. We're just a group that tries to promote excavation safety, and we're a group that tries to work together to get education out there on preventing contacting underground utilities, right? So we've got a big job ahead of us. We really do. I think we're a really great team, and we just communicate really well, and I think we've got a really great goal. Our goal is a lofty goal. One is to reduce and eliminate accidental underground utility contact. And Charlie knows that's a big goal because there's a lot of accidental damages that happen out there. Some of them are very minor in nature, but they are all major in consequences that could have happened, right? So there's a lot of that. So we've got to reduce and eliminate those, but also reduce and eliminate excavation incidents of all types. So we have trench collapse is one of them. Machine tip over, striking an overhead power line. So all of that has to be really reduced. Charlie, what do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just a kind of caveat of everything that's been said. Obviously our trench safety is the #1 priority. Making sure that everybody's doing everything safe so we can all go home to our families at the end of the day. That's our #1 goal, is to go home to our families after a hard day work. And being down in a trench that's unsafe is no excuse. So everybody knows the standard, or should know the standard. If you don't know the standard, get to know the standard. As Mark said, we will provide you with whatever information that you need to get to know the standard, just to make sure that everybody understands what trench safety is all about. As the photo that's up on the screen right now, that's ridiculous. That shouldn't be happening. Yeah, it's a good wide trench, but there's still no excuse for that. And it happens all too often. I see it every day when I'm out driving around doing my tailgate meetings. You'll see me driving around. I'll be out on the job site. I'll pull up and I'll do a safety tailgate talk, guys, just because it's that important to us. So just make sure you're respecting the marks. If you're going to be crossing a utility, pothole, make sure that you are potholing these utilities so you prevent the damages, and just dig safe. That's the #1 thing. Dig safe. That's all I got.
Elizabeth, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No, basically that, let's be safe all the time. Let's avoid any shortcuts. It's not worth it. You have seen through the presentation that Mark gave us today. That is not worth it. And we can prevent any fatalities, and let's do it. We can do it. We have done it, and we need to keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
Hey, well, Mark, I'll chime in if you don't mind.
Yeah, Brian
Wood.
Yeah, buddy.
I just want to reiterate a point that you made earlier on, and that's a management issue, right? Is one of the things you said. And what's the culture of that company? And I'm talking like at the foreman level, is it acceptable that workers are getting in those trenches? And then so, does the owner of the companies know that practice is happening? So that's something I think companies need to look at. What risk are they tolerating out there? And then as Manny just put in the chat, Kansas City area office has a duty officer online. And I'm hoping that there's other folks on here on both sides of the state. Kansas or Wichita area office has the same thing. But as folks like you and others are out there, say something then to try to hopefully change that condition at that time. But if not, do feel free to put those complaints into OSHA.
Yeah.
And save that life. Because I think you mentioned it too, Chatter. That Chatter got that trench box in that one site that you showed earlier. And that you said that's a near miss. I look at that as a life or two saved.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's if somebody's gonna die on that job site while I'm there, if you know what I'm saying, if it's an immediate danger to life and health situation, you need to make calls. You need to call somebody. You need to reach out 1-800-321-OSHA. It's like what's in the chat function. You need to reach out to somebody, call the local fire department, get a hold of the local utility, get somebody out there to back you up. And, that's a super good point, Brian. And one of the things, in Brandon's, I'm actually, there's an issue going on right now that I'm getting, I'm getting text messages on where they're digging 15 feet deep. And there's a trench box there, but it's on the road. It's not being used. And there's a ladder sticking out of the hole right now. So this is going on right now. So, this group is a good group. We're a good team. We try to actually make a difference. We try to figure out why these crews are doing this kind of thing and try to avoid this. Try to intervene when we can. And Randy Clayton had a question here. Who is the champion of trench safety in the Kansas City area office? Elizabeth, the trench safety in Kansas City area office. That'd be, you and Karina lead the charge on that, right? So.
Well, what he means with the champion?
Yeah, the expert, but I mean everybody in the Kansas City area office, but. Yeah, Elizabeth to me is the champion, and Elizabeth and Karina, they participate every year in the Damage Prevention Summit, and they really are super supportive of what we do down there.
Yeah, they can call us anytime. They can email us, and also Mark, I want to add, we always focus on the bad experiences that an employer is going to have if they don't comply with the law. But I want to put something positive out there. I think that it was like 2 weeks ago, the Kansas City area office stopped at a job site where they had a trench. And the trench, everything was in compliance. So yes, we opened the case, but we closed the case in compliance.
Yeah, very nice.
Possible, people.
Yeah.
That's possible. So you should be more than proud and happy that you had 2 OSHA inspectors on site and you received no citations. Oh my God, I think that we have to celebrate those things. So the message is getting out quickly, and that's what we want to see more and more. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. AJ, is there anything you want to add?
I think you guys pretty much covered it. You know, they're just the same thing. So many times you see the protection outside not being used, and it's always, I'm only going to be in there for a second. You know, it's going to be quick.
Okay.
You know, that's how fast the collapse happens. It's quick.
Well, like I said, this was the fastest excavation safety meeting ever, and we did 1 hour of content in 55 minutes. Can you believe that? So we made it happen today. So what I want to do is say thank you to everybody for joining us. This webinar is being recorded. We will put it up on the Missouri Common Ground Alliance YouTube channel. I want to say thank you to Elizabeth and Charlie for joining me on this presentation today. AJ and Brandon, everybody that spoke up, and Brian Wood, appreciate you. You know, what we're trying to do here, were two very simple things here. Prevent trench collapses that kill employees, prevent excavation job site incidents like the Focus 4. Everybody here needs to wear your seatbelt, and then also make sure you're digging safely around underground utilities, calling before you dig, know the proper utility locate process, right? And if you have questions, reach out to Charlie on that. Look at Missouri-811.org. There's tons of events that Charlie and the team are doing all over the state. They'll be at the state fair. They're actually doing locator training at events all over the state right now. So there's a lot going on. Watch MOCGA.org, watch locateradio.net. Check out the excavation resources on OSHA.gov, and check out Missouri-811.org. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the Missouri Common Ground Alliance. All of our contact info is on mocommonground.org, and my contact info is going to be in this presentation. If you have any questions, reach out to us. Thank you all. Be safe. Thank you to Charlie and Elizabeth and everybody, and we'll see you all in the future. Appreciate you. Take care.